Yeah, me too. I just have to take off a layer. Take off my shoes, guys. Sorry.
Guys.
Oh, that's a.
Oh, okay.
That is
Okay.
not
Well,
okay.
Get comfy.
Against it.
I don't even know where Deb went to.
Okay. All right. Time to open a section of my notebook. Oh.
Yep, take your notes out.
Wanna
Set
take
this up.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I forgot these were doing that. So excited to be here.
Oh, here's a thank you note I was supposed to write and send 2 days ago.
Brittany.
Oh. For the interview or for fun?
This is so fantastic and so informal, so I'm just going to really informally begin. More because I have a lot of content to cover, so I don't need to go on and on about my resume, but just very briefly, for those of you who have not met me, my name is Sarah Hinkle. I am the speech coach here at Colorado College. I'm rounding down and finishing up my 8th year here, and I provide communication support across departments. It's one of the many jobs that I have, and this is what I'm modeling for you today. So the focus today is particularly on how to become an effective speaker, right? Because the idea is to not just give you tips that you can use for isolated instances like your MAT research presentation, but hopefully things that you can apply in the classroom as well. My background is in education. I have my master's in curriculum and instruction with a literacy specialist degree. So I am so excited to be here because this is absolutely near and dear to my heart. In addition to that, I spent 7 years in the classroom in public schools, so I know what you're going through. I'm listening to the conversations about applying for jobs. Yeah, this is a really tense time, and I'm going to do everything I can to take this information, advocate for it, and hopefully you can apply it not just here, but while interviewing, giving that lesson plan that you were talking about a few minutes ago, making sure that you are as credible as possible when you walk into any room. Credibility is first and foremost the biggest tip that I'm going to offer you today. When it comes down to the core of it, the root of it, is ethos. Ethos is Greek for credibility. If you're not credible, no one listens. If no one's listening, you lose impact. If you have no impact, you've lost your whole meaning, right? Ergo means nothing. So let's go to the source. Go to the source. After nearly 2,300 years after his death, Aristotle remains one of the most influential people that ever walked this planet. He did a lot of things, but as a Greek philosopher and scientist, we're going to focus on one main thing. He rooted our ideas in logic and in communication. He rooted our ideas in logic and communication 2,300 years ago. Those ideas are still applied today in rhetoric. Rhetoric is another term for persuasion. How is it that people can get up in front of a room and convince you of content? That content is real and that it's meaningful. And beyond that, as educators, our job extends to impacts, right? It doesn't mean anything if you get up and you present this information, you advocate for it, you unpack it for your audience, and it becomes real and meaningful, but then after the students leave, they forget about it. So we don't have hours and hours of time, like I said, but hopefully I will give you at least some things to think about on what it is that you can do as a presenter to become a more credible speaker, how to make your content come alive, and give it those impacts that it so desperately needs so the students can what? Build schema, right? Continue to learn after you build those foundations. This is going to be interesting because I'm going to lean down here awkwardly and switch pages, and that's okay. So to tell you that I've come prepared and help build my credibility initially, so you know I'm not just going to go tangentially and randomly ramble off on content, I'm going to give you my agenda. You should always give an agenda when giving a formal presentation. You know this. But first we're going to cover ethos. I'm going to do it in a myriad of ways. I'm going to create a Venn diagram for you, right? Speaking your language. I'm also going to get artistic and create a credibility tree. We're going to build upon our tree as the presentation progresses. And then we are going to cover essential criteria. As we're building that tree, we're going to I want you to talk to me about what it is you're nervous about with these, specifically with these presentations. And then we can broaden out later if there's time, if you have more generalized questions about presentations. Talk about organizations, why it's essential both external organization and internal organization. Internal organization is something that often gets pushed to the wayside. So a little bit more focus on what you can do in the middle of the presentation verbally to make sure that you kind of stay on that river zen we're going to talk about, that you keep floating along and that things don't get muddy. Standing and deliver, what that looks like, how to answer questions with ease and confidence, and just some tips on speech anxiety. Now, this is what you shouldn't do on a slide, but I wanted to put Manya's specific rubric on what she's going to be looking for. You all have this, right? Any good educator? No, you don't have this. Well, you have it now. I encourage you to get your device out, take a screenshot, because these are all of the criteria that needs to be covered to ace this presentation. I'm going to let you take the time to read through this. And then tell me what your biggest fears are when reading through this. And biggest fears and/or where do you want additional support? When you read something, you're like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that one thing. I'm nervous about this. So communicate that with me so I can answer those questions directly, but I'll let you read first.
What are you worried about? I'm going to have a difficult time refraining from fidgeting.
Oh, okay.
I want to wear my rings.
Nice cut. That's okay.
This is like expert level presentation
Yeah,
stuff.
we're just gonna be flexible. I'm gonna be leaning over. Things are gonna be moving. You won't have the rubric in advance. All good. What else?
I was gonna say it never reads off of slides because I feel like I look at slides, but does that mean that I'm reading them?
Ooh. Okay. That's a really good one. Well, we're going to hit slides. And everyone else is set. We've got this. You understand?
Maybe
I'm
like-
just nervous on the
Yeah, like
Okay, well, yeah,
general.
and that's okay. So when I talk, yeah, the general anxiety, and I may say something,
yeah.
if it triggers, yes, this is something I'm specifically worried about. Talk to me more about this. Just let me know. The worst thing you can do as a presenter, okay, is to have all of this information, get out and start spouting information, and it's just vacuous. It means nothing to you, and you're like, yeah, I kind of already know this, lady. And move on, right? I need you to openly communicate with me and say, okay, you've hit a point, you've hit a nerve. I'm not really sure how I can take what you're saying and make it happen. And that way, maybe I can unpack it a little bit more so your anxiety lowers. And you can maybe apply that information and it's not just up in this nebulous universe not doing anything. Yes?
One thing that I think I would be worried about is like making my material engaging, but also getting through it at like an appropriate pace and covering everything.
Okay, engagement.
kind of.
So, brevity. It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
Right. You know the quote, the Shakespeare quote on brevity? Brevity is the soul of wit. Isn't that beautiful? What does that mean? Hi. What does that mean?
I mean, if you're gonna like diss someone, you don't like take 5 minutes to do it. You get it done short and sweet.
Right. Good. But in a positive scope as well, wit is in intelligence, right? Sharp, intelligence, cunning. The most intelligent people can get things accomplished quickly, and that includes in dialogue as well. Yeah.
I think along with pacing, maybe just like having your presentation that flows in an appropriate way and lines up with your handout, and like knowing how long to spend on each thing. I guess that's a personal problem, but like
No, that's
not taking too long on one section.
So pacing
Pacing,
in
yes.
Yeah. And that goes with the internal organization that we're going to talk about. Yeah, but pacing is real because it's flexible, it's fluid. It's one of those things that you can plan that out in advance and say, you can be like me and a bit type A and regimented and say, I'm going to spend 2.5 minutes on introduction. I'm going to spend 8 minutes on the body of the speech, right? But sometimes things happen and confusion covers your audience and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm going way too quickly. I realize my rate is extraordinarily high. I'm going to have to slow down, otherwise people are not going to understand what I'm saying. Then all of a sudden it gets wonky. And then what happens? When things get wonky in a presentation, what happens? What happens to the speaker?
You get stressed.
Their anxiety goes up. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, things like content kind of go out the window, right? And all we're thinking about is, all right, what's just the next line that I have to say? How can I get through it? Rather than how you present the material. All of the style and delivery goes out the window because our energy is focused elsewhere. So hopefully, again, a lot of this comes down to a very simple concept, preparation. So prepare for the worst. How can you prepare for things to go wrong? How can you prepare for, markers to not work and boards to move and, all of these other things so you can still remain relaxed. And part of that is just knowing the content well enough that you're not relying on reading the material very much. How long are these presentations?
Is it 15? Have you guys gotten a guideline sheet?
No, so we just realized this.
Did you see the rubric?
So sorry.
5 minutes. Here.
15 might keep dropping that number.
This is it. So take a screenshot.
Let me
of
pull it up for you.
Why, you said 5 minutes?
Just, Deb, I just talked to her.
No, 5 would be like introduced yourself. I guess we're just.
So it was my understanding
Community
it was
slides,
either a 10-minute presentation with 5 minutes of questions.
That might be what it
That's what I
is.
think.
10
Oh,
with 5
really?
minutes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't gotten much of
That's
that.
okay. Yeah.
I asked her for the schedule, and it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes for questions.
She has it ordered.
Yep. No order yet, but the time is from, I think.
Okay. So while you're doing that, are you all right? Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay. While we're waiting for people to get this down, let's go back to this Venn diagram and talk about the idea of the 3 proofs of rhetoric. So Aristotle, when designing what makes a logical and persuasive speaker, came up with 3 proofs or 3 concepts that have to exist in all areas of the speaker. And there's a balance there, as you can see. This is all supposed to be the same size. These orbs are supposed to be the same size. So forgive me. There's logos, ethos, and pathos. Okay. These all have to be working in tandem for their speaker to have credibility, okay, to have ultimate credibility. What is logos?
Logic.
So beyond that, how do you apply logic? What's the application of applying logic in a presentation? Facts and evidence. Yep. Ethos is your credibility. But what makes you credible?
Like how you're carrying yourself.
Yeah, confidence, right? Trustworthiness. Goodwill toward your audience, right? Authenticity. What do I mean by authenticity?
Not faking something.
Beyond that. Yeah, I mean, it means don't
personally
be fake.
invested.
You're personally invested. That you have your style that's your own. When you're authentic, you're working within your own wheelhouse. Some of you will naturally have higher energy levels than others, right? I tend to run high energy. I'm always just a little bit taut inside, so I have lots of energy in me. I have a theater and speech comm background and education as well. I have a lot of stage performance background. So when I am in front of an audience, I automatically want to perform. I have to sort of rein that in because I lose credibility if it looks like I'm playing a part, right? I still need to be myself, and I still need to remember that I can't upstage myself by doing all these flailing movements and being really big and extraordinary and having all these big facial expressions. It really pulls from my content, right? It's goofy, it's entertaining, sure, but I have to be careful to balance that out. Now, other people would look at me and go, whoa, this is not who I am. This is not the way that I present myself. That's okay. Okay, it's your job as a speaker and educator to decide what works within my wheelhouse. How can I show credibility and authenticity, that I'm trustworthy with my style in the way I present information. A lot of people don't take that time to really reflect on that and what makes them unique, what makes them stand out as a speaker, what works for them. What's pathos?
Emotion?
Yeah, it's your emotional appeal. Now, these ideas apply not just in the way you present the information, but applies in other areas as well. You apply all of these aspects within the body of your speech, too. It is appropriate to have limited amounts of ethos in your MAT presentation. Okay? It is appropriate. Just the same as it's appropriate the way you're speaking and you're highly engaged and you're showing that this content matters, it's equally appropriate to have stories, narratives, and ideas that evoke some level of emotion. Remember, it's a balance. And I want you to think about, in this sweet spot, this is where we want to hit. What is this word called? What type of speaker is this who's able to maintain the appropriate levels of ethos, pathos, and logos?
Gifted.
Ooh, okay. Gifted?
Maybe. Someone else as well.
We'll start with that, and then we'll continue to think about what is it that makes us, what's that sweet spot that we want to hit? Okay. Next, let's talk a little bit about preparation. Preparation is truly the antidote to public speaking anxiety. Now, this is kind of what happens, right? So I'm taking the onus off of you a little bit with public speaking. It is scary. All speakers experience some level of anxiety. Public speakers who do it all the time obviously are able to control levels, but I, of course, have levels of anxiety when I'm preparing for a presentation. Is this going to make sense? Am I going to be engaging enough? Am I clear? Will I be able to tell? Etc. All of these ideas. How can I make sure that I'm best prepared to make sure my content comes alive and has meaning and impact for you, right, long term? How can I do that, right? What are some of the things that I can do?
I think the first thing is just know your content really well.
Yeah, okay, know your content really, really well. The second thing is never commit yourself to something that you're not invested in. Okay? Now, this is maybe a bit of a challenge because you're at that point in your research where you can't change your mind, right? But I assume at some point your professor said, make sure that you pick something that you're really invested in and that you can obviously use this in the future because you are going to have to make this content matter to others. Right now, I want everyone to tell me in one sentence what their topic is and provide justification for it. In one sentence, tell me why it matters. I'll give you 15 seconds, and I'm going to just popcorn pick you. What's your topic and why it matters? Does your topic not matter? No, it does.
I'll go.
Yes.
My topic is student-teacher relationships in the classroom using interventions, such as letters to the students and post-it notes that address positive reinforcement. And the reason why that's important is because I'm looking at the whole child using Notting's theoretical framework. So I'm looking at how students are individual in a community.
Great, thank you.
I'm investigating the effects of a writer's workshop style of teaching in a 6th grade classroom, because 6th grade is a period of time where you stop like learning the exact just skills of reading and writing and start having to apply them in a more serious way. So it's a kind of a period of time where writing is in flux and becomes really kind of important to the performance, to the students' performance in other subject areas as well.
Thank you.
I'm examining goal orientation in a 5th grade classroom and the impact on enjoyment and success or achievement success in math. And it's important because 5th grade is typically the last year of a mastery structure classroom before middle school, which is performance oriented, and students need to develop their own mastery oriented skills before they make that transition.
Okay.
How do we motivate reluctant writers in high school? Particularly if they have learning differences, and will staging a one-to-one meeting individually with those students and modeling for them specific writing help them to overcome that reluctance and produce courageous, creative writing as a result?
I'm looking at how different types of homework contribute to sort of student engagement and completion rates, and it's important because teachers like to assign homework, and there's a lot of struggles in that effort.
Me? I'm studying whether an integrated approach to multiplication instruction. By that I mean the integrated part is that we normally teach this very practice drill, memorization oriented instruction to teach multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
So integrating that with reasoning emphasis and developing reasoning skills, if that increases student multiplication fluency more than just drilling them with flashcards does.
Right.
Reason I did that was because I was shocked to see that was still kind of the typical approach, at least in the school I'm in. And it's important because we could be teaching it all wrong. There could be a much better way to teach it. There's a lot of kids that don't respond to that, I think, in my studies that I found. And
Why does it matter?
that's why it matters. We could be teaching multiplication all wrong, like
Okay.
across the world.
Okay.
It's a big one.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to do. You guys were.
I didn't go, sorry.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I didn't butt it over. I'm studying the effects of reading narrative fiction on 4th grade students' empathy. And this is important because in this increasingly standardized kind of climate that we have going on in the public school and in private school settings, and this era of accountability also, it's becoming increasingly important to, and it is very important, to show that you can embed social emotional learning into academic content and into like standards-based curriculum.
Good. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. You all did that incredibly well. Very articulate. Were able to stand by your research and why it matters. Now, the problem with that is that that's only, you each spoke for approximately, well, varying, like so 15 seconds up to about a minute worth of time. So being able to articulate a lot more material, defend it in an organized way is so much more challenging because we're out of practice with it. You have all of it up here. You have more than you think you know up here, but being able to instrumentalize that knowledge quickly, effectively, and in an organized way is tough. Because when we're 3 years old, we're handed a big chubby crayon and we practice writing skills. Writing skills oftentimes, throughout K through 12, they're a metric for formative assessment. Oral assessment is much less common to use, and so it raises our anxiety because we don't experience it as much, and we're out of practice. But you can do it, and you are all able to defend in that short amount of time what it is that you're doing and why it's relevant. The challenge with that is, I want you to think about and unpacking it one step further. For someone outside of the field of education, okay, let's say you meet someone in the produce section at Whole Foods, and they ask you, oh, what is it that you do with your life? Oh, I'm a student. student, I'm getting ready to graduate, I'm really nervous about this presentation. What's your presentation topic? And you tell them that. Everything you said was very much within the field of education and higher academia, which is great, right? It's appropriate. It's what you're used to, how you're used to conversing in the classroom. I want you to think by the end of the session, how can you unpack it that much more so you can tell anyone and look straight at them and saying, this research matters because, and fill in the blank. And I want a sound response that could be given to any lay audience who has a child in K through 12th grade. So think about that as you're listening. One of the things that it's really easy to do is we get really caught up in one type of rhetorical strength, right? So there are different types of rhetorical strengths or different modes of persuasion we stay in. And one of the modes in academia that we stay in is we speak in one different form or one different type of language. And with academia, we're speaking above, we're speaking high, right? And it's important to be able to be flexible with that, to be able to take that research, explain why it's important, what it means, and then continue to unpack it so it can be given to any audience and any lay audience. This really helps people outside of your research connect with what you're doing, because your peers are not sitting alongside with you reading the same research, right? They're not as invested as you are in the research. You are invested in your own research. That's a given. Your job is to make someone sitting here that's not as invested in what you're doing and try to get them invested and engaged in what you're doing. Part of how you can do that is simplify it, make it easy, and make those connections fast and quick when you're talking about them. Always deliver up here, but then be able to unpack it down. Does that make sense? This builds your credibility tenfold. Tenfold. How many professors, just thinking right in this moment, have you listened to outside of education, right? Because they're specialists in being able to do this effectively. But speak on a topic where you're sitting there going, oh my word, why does this matter? Why should I care about this? I have no idea why I should care about this. All I'm thinking about is lunch, and it's 12:02, and I really want to go to lunch. You know, whatever it is, but you're distracted. So all impacts go away. They lose their credibility. Are they still a credible, person? Do we believe that they are able to speak toward the subject area? Yes, of course. But if they're speaking onto something and it has no impact, has no meaning, right? So always remember that. Your research is relevant. I'm not trying to take that from you. It matters, absolutely. But you have to do the extra legwork to make sure that it matters to any audience. This will help keep your audience engaged. When your audience is engaged in what you're saying, guess what happens? They look up, they listen, they're leaning in, they're giving you positive nonverbal feedback. When that happens, your anxiety lowers and you're more comfortable. And then you're able to stay more organized. Represent communication. It's a real thing though. It is. It's so cool. Introductions matter. This is how you have initial ethos. There's initial ethos, there's derived ethos, or ethos that you gain toward the middle of your presentation, right? And then you have terminal ethos. So at the end, when I walk out of this room and I leave, how much impact will I have on you? That's terminal ethos. That's goals, right? I want to have intense terminal ethos. Walking into a room, starting out at the beginning, you don't have a lot of initial ethos to start with in your introduction. But the introduction is a great way to say, listen to me, I know I'm your peer, but I do know what I'm talking about, okay? Part of it is knowing the material. Part of it is having a plan on how you're going to start. Instead of just saying, hi, my name is, and my research was on this, create an embedded introduction. What's an embedded introduction? What is that? Start with a story. Education is about the kids. Okay? The research is about the kids. It's about success. It's about creating citizens that contribute to society, right? That's impact. So, tell me a story at the beginning. Share a narrative about why the problem exists. This is a persuasion. You have to lay the groundwork that a problem is there before you can launch into the justification, before you can launch into the research, before you can launch into methods and analysis, lay the groundwork and tell the story. Why the research exists in the first place. That's a really easy way to grab your audience's attention and pull them in. Storytelling is natural. We're all natural storytellers. We're all meant to listen to stories. We're designed that way. Okay? That's easy to do. If storytelling is not your forte, that's all right. You can launch and start and lead with research. But the goal of that, if you do that, is you have to be able to unpack that research to create meaning almost immediately. So a startling statistic, presenting research that already has common ground built in, right? So you're not trying to teach anything from the get-go. You're starting in an area where everyone sort of exists and understands and has pre-existing knowledge of.
I have a question about the narrative. Like, at what point does that narrative start to sound cliche? Because it kind of, I would feel like, oh, this student was struggling. Then I came in and did something changed, and now the student's no longer struggling. I feel like that's like the story arc for like this type of presentation.
The deal is.
I'm sorry if that was.
No, you're not. No. The deal is that when you're presented with a problem and the research suggests there needs to be a policy change, this is what I'm hearing from a lot of you, is that the problem still exists. So this kid may have been a sample, of research to show that, hey, this could work or this might work. But that's not the idea. The story shouldn't supersede your research, right?
Okay, yeah.
The story sets the tone and it provides background information and context so we catch up quickly. And you have what we call balance in a presentation. Because looking back at our Venn diagram here, we all get really research heavy. We do need a little bit of pathos in some way, okay? Pathos comes in within story. That's a natural story. Another way you can add pathos is in visuals. Okay. Showing clear visuals that provide depth and complexity to your content can also add to the emotional appeal to your content. It should not exceed this story. You don't sit down and it's not this 5-minute narrative, right? We're talking like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. It's concise. Remember brevity. How can you get the idea across quickly that there is a massive problem in our education system today? And this is my focus that I'm going to share with you. In the scope of, then you present your research, and then it's, hi, my name is. This is my research question and the agenda that I'm going to follow today. But I encourage to start with the story, 45 seconds, and then give an introduction. Now, if you don't like the hi, my name is, you don't have to do it, but every student, most students that I've talked to really feel comfortable with that anchor. I'm asking you to just embed that anchor rather than start with it. Yes? Did you have a question?
I just had a question about kind of the nature of, I think probably some of our research projects. I know I made it sound like this big like world applicable thing, but really mine was a case study. And so like how to tie in this kind of big universally identifiable story that everyone can relate to into like really I was just looking at 5 kids and seeing how I could teach them better.
Right, but the case study matters in the big picture.
Okay, so we have to kind of force that larger context.
You have to force the larger context. Otherwise, you're stuck into this micro, lens of this just matters within my case study. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have done the research on it, right?
Well, but I mean, yeah, I guess the point being like I did the research to improve my own teaching, not necessarily like the world of teaching. I don't know if I'm.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
But while that's true, improve your own teaching, it's still illustrative, though.
So that's my question, I guess. We should expand to the broader context, even if that wasn't the goal.
Right.
Yeah, you're talking to other elementary teachers who might have the same 5 kind of kids.
Okay.
And there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Okay.
They won't have the same 5, of course, but they've got 5 kids like this. I guarantee you they do.
Okay.
Lydia does.
Got it.
Probably.
Okay, this is a very quick claptrap organizational method that you can use in Roadmap. This is something that I like to do with every presentation. It obviously adjusts with the style of the presentation. So this is only suited just to get organized, okay? Just to get yourself organized. You should have these areas, okay, these big points here, but this also allows to kind of map out time allocation too, and where you want to spend the most time. It will vary depending on research, the type of research that you've done, how much unpacking that you need to do, etc. It is not a specific formula for everyone. Now, I've referenced already the storytelling. That is what you would call the intention getter portion of your presentation. After speaking with Manya and looking over her rubric, being able to have style with your delivery matters. You know, engagement matters. So that's why having this planned out introduction with a story prior to giving background, the history of the research as needed, and the justification. I mentioned justification earlier. In layman's terms, right, this is the so what element. I used to teach 8th grade. There was a lot of teaching I had to do where I always had to take their stance and go, so what? So what? You know, and I always had to have an answer for them because I wanted to. I wanted to tell them, this has impact, this has meaning, this matters. And I'll tell you why it matters, right? Make them care. It's the same thing for your audience and your peers. Make them care. Make them show them why it matters. Internal preview and agenda. This, again, keeps you organized and on track. I am, like, you know, my background, as I mentioned, is in theater and speech with education, and so I definitely have a flair for the dramatics. I love that mic drop line, because if this policy isn't instated, this is going to happen by the year 2022. You don't have to do that. It's just fun flair, and it's easy to do, and it's in a formula, so it helps you stay on track. Then you bounce back into your research method, and you start unpacking that. Very easy to follow, helps you stay on track, perfect for a 10-minute speech. Do you have questions about this at all?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How appropriate is it, like especially around that mic drop line area, to use a quote from, I have this awesome quote from Barack Obama on empathy and narrative fiction. To use something from another person to kind of engage the audience even more. Is that okay in a presentation like this, especially in the intro?
Oh, absolutely. I think with anything, there's framing. Do you know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
So how you present the information. So if it's just isolated, then it's this nebulous quote that doesn't kind of go anywhere, and you're like, oh, we love a Barack Obama, but we don't know why it has meaning. It has meaning why? Again, this is all the so what element. So I'm listening to you and going, okay, so what? Well, so what? Well, people loved Barack Obama for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was he was known for his empathy, right? Because we know as humans, empathy matters when connecting to others. We can't control bad things that happen, right? But we can control how we communicate to other people to show that we care, that they matter. That's why that quotation is relevant, and that's why you're studying empathy, right? Right? Like
Right.
big picture, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so give us some framing around it. Brevity, always brevity. We don't want this, we don't need a huge chronicle outlining that, but tell us why this quotation really stands out and why it's relevant to the research that you're getting ready to unpack.
Awesome.
I love it.
Thank you.
Now, when looking into the body of the speech, sometimes it gets really tough when you're thinking about the research and the methods and how to present this information where it has this natural flow. So with Argumentation 101, bless you, with Argumentation 101 in rhetoric, we are taught claim, warrant, and impact. So when you make a claim, when you make a statement, unless you're published in a peer-reviewed journal, you have to be able to provide the evidence that what you're saying is sound and true and real. Okay.
What was the word of that again?
Claim, warrant, and then impacts. So when you're talking about your research, so you don't end up doing this, research line, research line, research line, research line, and it just sounds like you're parroting information that you've read. Think about how you can structure the information in a stronger way. Make a claim about, the claim is a statement as to why this research matters, okay? Bigger picture, why it matters. Then you support that claim with the research from your authors. Okay? And then starts it out. This is your analysis portion. This is where you break down your understanding of the readings and the research that your authors did, and you link back. It's called link back to that claim. This is why my claim stands true. This is why it holds strong. This is why it's relevant today. And it's not outdated. It can be contradicted, but mine's stronger. I can refute and I will rebut. I know this claim to be true. Okay. Claim, warrant, impact your information. This is a really tight way to argue and persuade. Incidentally, this also works in interpersonal dialogue as well. If you're trying to win an argument, if you always structure it and claim, warrant, and impact, you're gonna have the stronger argument. You're more likely to win.
Sometimes you never like arguing logic with a logic person.
Right, but when you argue logic with someone who's not rational in the first place, you're not going to win anyway, right? Like because it's people that aren't rational are going to and they'll do something that's irrational and walk away, and you're like, that's lose-lose. But if you're both logical and one doesn't know the formula, you're more likely to have the stronger argument, and the other person will concede faster. Try it. It could be as simple as, I think we should eat at the preserve today. You know, like, it could be that simple.
Oh yeah.
I use that.
Oh, we should have had this before that class.
I know. We had a debate
That's
in
when we needed
educational
it.
policy class. Actually, 2 debates.
You weren't taught that structure?
No.
Oh my
Mike,
gosh.
claim, warrant, impact.
Yes, that's how you say it. Absolutely.
I'm just emotional.
Cool. Internal organization. This is an area where, like, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that a lot of people struggle with. There's that claim, warrant, impact for you too. That way, it kind of clearly allocates that, even though it's kind of tiny writing. Roadmap adds to your credibility. This adds to your derived credibility. What's derived credibility again? Should I make my tree so we remember? I was trying to cut out the tree because we don't have a lot of time. But really quickly. Initial,
Oh, it's the middle kind.
derived, terminal. Remember terminal?
I
Yep.
remember terminal.
Make our ethos tree. This is ethos. Here's roots. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, initial credibility. This is when the reputation precedes the presentation, right? When your professor walks into the front of the room, they have initial credibility. You know that they're credible with the content that they're about to unpack for you all today. Your job as a speaker is derived credibility. You want to make sure that you earn derived ethos. What I'm speaking toward today is to help give you that derived ethos. You earn it during the presentation. We talked a little bit about preparation. We talked about having a prepared and strong introduction. We talked about not reading from your notes a little bit. We talked about brevity. Okay, we've hit that as well. We discussed a little bit about the balance between logos, ethos, and pathos, and make sure that that is balanced, that we're not evidence heavy. Because if I came up to you and I just started citing research about the power of persuasion, and I didn't add any other comments, any other narratives, any other jokes or asides or personal anecdotes in with that, you would be bored. Or more bored than you already are. Ha! There's a joke. Yay! Awkward, obligated chuckle. Right. Exactly. But internal organization also adds to your derived ethos. It tells you, I know where I am and I know where I'm going. Okay? It does what I just did, and that is looping back and referencing some of the main points that I've already hit to show you that I'm organized, I'm in control, and I remember what I'd said. Okay? This was not memorized on the fly. Further concretes this evidence to be true. This is called tautology in debate. I say it so, so it's so. If I keep repeating the information, it becomes stronger in your mind. Signposting. You say something. Okay? You bring up new information. You let it resonate with your audience a bit, and then you mention it again. Okay. Brevity. The power of brevity. Concise, tight, organized, wit. That's signposting. You keep referring to main points that you want your audience to remember, to listen to. Signpost that information. Transitions are annoying to do as a speaker. I'm going to be honest with you because it feels redundant. Now that I've talked about this, we're going to move on to this next point. However, transitions are necessary, right? They help the audience stay engaged. It's a metric to show that you're inching closer to the end. When the audience knows there's an end in sight and we're actually moving forward or not just staying in sort of this weird circular rotation, they stay more engaged. What happens when the audience is more engaged?
You have less anxiety.
You have less anxiety, right? When people are looking down and they're not listening to you, that's tough. That's tough, right? Even for a seasoned speaker, it's really hard to make sure that you're still as engaging as you were, right? The hardest part about the MAT presentations is because at the end, unless you are a debater and you look forward to the questions at the end, you always know that those are looming. So your anxiety is already going to be a bit higher. The stakes are a little higher, right? Because you don't just get to present the information, thank you, and then sit down. You have to defend it a little bit. And that can be anxiety inducing. So anything you can to make sure that anxiety remains in control, I encourage it. Keep summarizing information. If you're lost on where you are, repeat something that you've said. Remember, it sounds redundant to you because you know it so well. People are not inside your head. That is the hardest challenge. That is the most difficult thing. You have all this information. You know it's relevant. You know it's true. You know you can back it up. But to make sure that you are unpacking that, getting it across to your audience in a way that is sound is tough. And so repeating that information will strengthen it, as I mentioned, and it also buys you a little time. So if you don't know where you're going, stop, repeat that information, summarize, take a drink of water. Helps clear your brain a little bit, helps relax you before you move on. What questions do you have about this?
This made me wonder about what type of handout you would recommend. So like, are we just gonna outline, like this made me think of, I should just hand everyone the outline. And then they can see like kind of where they are in the organization structure. Or is that gonna be like,
I don't think you need to do that if
Okay.
you have a PowerPoint.
Right.
Because the PowerPoint is your outline,
Yep.
if you will. So I don't think you need to, as teachers, we want to do that, right? We want to be, I totally get the feeling of like, okay, I wanna
have
make
it in
sure.
8 places is usually my
Right,
strategy as a
have it in,
teacher.
yes. And I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm going to draw you a tree and a Venn diagram. I'm going to have this in front of you. I'm going to talk
Yeah.
at you. I'm going to make you talk to me. Yeah, I do all of the methods too to try to keep you as engaged as possible. So I hear that, but I think it's overkill a little bit. More than anything too, you want to be selfish in a sense. You want people to be looking at you. You don't want them to be detracted, from what you're saying or distracted at all. All right. The next one, most of you, I would think, would already know this, but since this was hit really strongly on the rubric, I thought I'm going to hit this. Definitely going to hit this. Slides. Students can have a tendency, and I'm going to give you a lot of grace and say, I'm going to say outside of education department, have tendency to fill slides too heavy. Just a general reminder, slides are not used as giant note cards, ever. Ever. They are not your giant note cards. Right? So reading off of slides is unnecessary as your audience, as long as your audience is literate. You don't need to read to them. Okay. Slides complement what you are saying as a speaker, and they should never upstage the speaker. If you make them too content heavy, they upstage the speaker. And the best example I have today, obviously, was the rubric that I shoved all onto one slide, and I just stopped talking because that was intentional. I knew you'd want to read through it, and make sure that you had that information. But if I were to talk over that and try to present all of this new information in tandem, your brain would be fighting against it. So you'd either tune me out or you wouldn't be able to get the content on the slide. Slides are meant to complement what you say. It's a true choreography of the presentation.
Means looking at slides appropriate? Like,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, you should be one with your slides, right? So you should feel very comfortable, and you need to, you must. I encourage, if you have graphs up, you need to reference and be connected. physically connected to the content, okay? Now, obviously, standing and staring and doing this, that's not effective, but you know that as teachers. You're not gonna have your back to your audience. So I'm not gonna give you a lot of that silly information. But making sure your graphs are clean, that you are connected to it, that you're really showing us what it means, right? You're showing us like a stronger depth and understanding of the content. And you're not just repeating facts that you wrote in your paper. You're bringing up the relevant facts and you're coloring it in, right? You're telling us why it matters. Why does this chunk in this pie graph matter more than this chunk? You're bringing it to life for us, in essence. Slides are powerful, they're bold, and they have emotion in them. So if it's really hard for you to gather up that emotional appeal, finding visuals that make people feel things can help do that job for you. Okay. Slides, again, should never upstage what you're saying, so having the whizzy animations and things that don't really add anything to your presentation, I do not encourage that at all, right? There's a time and place for whizzy animations. If you're a first grade teacher teaching phonics, absolutely. But in a professional context, make sure that as you're looking at every slide, does it have meaning, purpose? Does it add depth and complexity into what I'm saying? Does it give power to what I'm saying? If you have what I call a mic drop line in the middle of your presentation where you are really sharing something important that you want highlighted, students never do this and I really encourage it, but put a white slide up. So there's nothing for them to look at but you. All the focus is drawn on you. That's a really clever way to add a little drama without being dramatic, to share a really important point in your research, a turning point, a moment of understanding or clarity, and it adds to that. It adds to the moment when nothing is there and it goes to a white slide or a black slide. Make sure you slow down your delivery so all the focus is on you, and then you share this information and people will really be drawn in by that very simple method. So make sure you're connected with those slides. Your delivery is extemporaneous, meaning, yeah, you should have notes in front of you to make sure you stay on track. You have to be timely. But it allows for flexibility. So if you're having a brain glitch and you need to look down, you can glance down at those notes, but you're not reading from them. It's working for you. Questions on slides?
What's marketing avatar?
Oh, thank you. Okay, the marketing avatar. How many of you have heard of this? Has anybody had a marketing class?
Yeah.
Okay, the marketing avatar. Okay. I actually don't need to draw it. On your paper, just draw a little stick person. Your marketing avatar, this is a concept that was created obviously in marketing and strategies in marketing and how to market a product or an idea or a concept, right? So the first thing you have to do in marketing is you have to consider your audience. Who's going to be buying into this idea? Who's buying into this idea? One of the most brilliant finds of all time, and this is a bit cliche, but the first one that's coming, is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs couldn't build computers. He could take one apart, he couldn't build one, save his life. But he could market the hell out of his product. And he did that, in that level, it was genius. He was able to connect with his audience and use rhetorical strengths to get people excited about the iPhone when it first came out. And he would marvel, isn't this amazing? Isn't this beautiful? And he would have the audience marveling at this product that they had never seen before. Oh, the marketing avatar, sorry. So with the marketing avatar, I need you to think about who is your audience? Your audience is your peers and your panel of professors. What is it that they care about? So it's not just considering demographics. You know who they are, you know their age and their education, their background, but it's their psychographics. What are their attitudes, values, and beliefs? And Steve Jobs knew. He knew what people wanted. And he sold his product. He got people excited about it before they even knew what it was. Okay? That's what I'm asking you to do. I want you to think about your audience's attitudes, values, and beliefs. And as educators, what makes you excited? What do you care about? You care about your students. Learning, achievement levels, success, personal growth. Classroom management. Think about what matters. When you're thinking about what matters to your audiences and what they value, it'll help you frame your content, okay? It'll help you design how you're going to present the material. There are a million different ways you can present material. How can you present it in such a way that matters to your audience? It already matters to you. And unfortunately, what you see happening is that a lot of speakers will just present the information and how it matters to them, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a personal stance. That happens a lot. People never take into consideration, well, how can I make it matter to my audience? So thinking of those attitudes, values, and beliefs and making it count. Going back to working within your own wheelhouse, I want to talk about that for a second too. What makes you shine? What makes you sparkle as a person, as a speaker? Are you funny? Are you able to integrate humor easily? Are you controlled when you speak? So you know your confidence well. You're able to move about the room. I think we were talking about podiums before, whether you prefer them or not, right? Okay, are you really awesome with the slides? With the visuals really bring impact and meaning? Are you a storyteller? Are you a natural storyteller? Use those elements. Okay? Use them in your interviews as well. I'm an expressive person. I know I'm an expressive person. I've been told that since the minute I understood what that meant. So in interviews, you better believe I used my expressions to my advantage. You know, intense eye contact, highly engaged, really thinking about what my face was doing the entire time, and to keep those interviewers connected to me, to what I was saying. Another skill that I have is reading, is soft skills. It's nonverbal communication and reading people all the time, constantly picking up on cues, what you're giving me. Are you engaged? Are you not? Are you bored? Are you hungry? All of those things I'm reading from you right now. What are your skills that you can apply to your little personal avatar so you can create this dynamite performance? Okay? Because it's not about just presenting the information. We know the information is relevant and it matters. You know it's going to be organized. You're organizing that. How you present it, how you frame it, is how you create that marketing avatar. Questions on that? Not at all? Does anybody have any ideas on what they're going to apply, attitude, value, and belief that you hadn't considered before for your audience? How much time do you have before you present this?
A week and a half.
In 3 days.
Oh, that's plenty of time. And you see each other plenty of time before that, right? So, No.
I live with that one.
Okay.
That one has a name.
I encourage you, this actually could be a really fun activity. Create a Google Doc and write like the one sentence explanation of what you're doing and ask people candidly, do you care about this? And see what they say. No, I really don't. Be honest with each other. I don't really care. Make me care. You know, and have that dialogue back and forth. Okay, this is why you should care. and go back and forth and play with it and think about what matters to your audience. This is when you're going to find those psychographics, right? Oh, okay, this is what these people, this is what really my peers care about, rather than just a generalized understanding of what you believe education majors care about. Could be a fun activity. Stand and deliver, question section. Who's excited about answering questions? I love answering questions. It's like, you know, sitting at the plate, right? Lob them up. You know your research. These are some of the things you can do. Don't worry, these are some of the things you can do. I'm going to give you this handy dandy list. This will help you be as prepared as you possibly can be. But first and foremost, remember, credibility. Smile. You're ready for this. You've been working 4 years, 5 years to be here. 5 years. You are ready for this. You know your content. You know you're a good teacher. Self-talk matters. Being in control. Smile. Smile at your audience and be ready for it, rather than look like deer in the headlights and you're dreading every second. That destroys your credibility. It destroys everything you just said. It's like, oh, I'm lying. Now they're going to catch me in it. That's what that's reading to the audience. Even though that's not what you're thinking, it transfers the same. Okay, so smile and try to be relaxed. The cool thing about questions, you can have anyone stage this with you. Okay? Give a portion of your presentation, give the whole presentation to somebody outside of the realm of education and say, I'm going to require you to ask me 5 questions after this. So have your friend ready and practice with somebody. Call your mom. All right, mom. Give the presentation. Ask me questions. Practice with it as much as you can. First and foremost, know your authors. As an educator, I have what I call my works cited heroes. I have authors that I rely on a lot. Dr. Gloria Latson-Billings is probably my favorite. I love Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Paulo Freire, oh man, my heart. So when I was doing my educational research, I cited those people over and over again, and several others. And I knew these authors. I knew what other authors contested their research. I knew why their research was relevant. That's important. Sometimes research becomes outdated, right? Your professors will likely know that. So you have to make sure you know the biography of your authors. Be able to know what's been contradicted and why their research still remains top notch today in 2018. Look at this as like a sales opportunity, right? You are selling the legitimacy of your ideas in answering these questions. So get excited about it. Get excited about it. Your scope is limited. Your professors do not expect you to know all the things, right? They don't. So understand that you will have boundaries, and it is your job if they are asking a question outside of the scope of your research that you can defend that, right? So it's absolutely appropriate to say, this falls outside of the bounds of what I've researched, and this is why. Be honest. Do not try to make something up on the spot, right? Honesty counts. Be able to defend why it stands outside of what you covered in your presentation. Okay. Treat it like an interview. Always have your best foot forward, even though you're nervous. Again, smile, relaxed, remember your credibility, what you need to do. You can ask for a clarification of the question. Okay? You can ask the question to be restated in a different way. You can rely on the integrity and the rigor of the research. So use that information in front of you and be able to defend your answer with, because the research states this. Okay? Use that. Use that warrant when answering your question. And it's okay to take a second to find that specific line, right, to be able to defend it. Give credit where credit is due. Make sure that when you're answering questions, that if the ideas are unique rather than cited from elsewhere. Okay, need to be able to know who came up with these ideas when you're answering their questions. How many of you are proposing specific policies that need to be in place? No one is? Okay. So I'll skip that. I'm sure you have a paragraph truly on the comprehensive knowledge of where your research lies and what it means, bigger picture, not just within your case study, okay? You need to have comprehensive understanding of what your research means, big picture, and the big puzzle that is education. As well as in the philosophical field. You want to help connect the dots for future research to be done. Questions?
So we would not then just like begin, or like not begin, but have built into our presentation a slide suggesting future research. Should we just kind of wait for that? in the
No, I
question
mean,
section?
you definitely can share what you believe, where future research should go,
Okay.
right? That's showing synthesis, right, and
Right.
understanding the content. You're saying, okay, based on everything that I've read and this is what I've learned, this is where I believe the direction it should go in. And that actually sort of lobs up or tees up a perfect question for
Yeah.
someone to ask. Be sure to defend it, right? So you need to be able to always play devil's advocate and say, okay, if I am going to suggest that research should be put into this direction, understand that you may be questioned why. So always be able to defend and say why. And remember, those thoughts, like I mentioned, can be coming from your research and not just your claims alone. Okay. This is something that can be practiced. Remember that. I've had MAT students come and meet with me just to practice this portion. They give me their paper, they're like, will you read this and ask me questions? Yeah, I will. And I'll show you how to answer it. This is where a little bit of acting does come in. I know that this is anxiety inducing for a lot of you, and most people don't like to answer questions, but I really challenge you to look like you're enjoying it. Okay? I'm serious, yeah. It will help you. It's self-fulfilling prophecy. Yep.
Would you recommend like just working our limitations kind of like into our like reporting on our results / conclusion
Yeah.
section?
Mhm.
Like this is what I.
And that's typical, right? Like
Yeah.
that's sort of the cookie cutter how you would do that. You're like, this is where the limitations lie, this is where the actual research falls short, and this is where I would go in the future. And that's
Okay.
fine, you can do that. Again, going with your wheelhouse and what you do well, think about where you want to put the most emphasis.
Right.
If you're not very good at predicting where research should go, a little less time on that and more about where the research fell short and where the limitations were.
Okay.
Everything is framing. So think about how you're going to present it. Okay, going back to our tree, we have that initial, that expert, right? And then we're derived research, derived ethos. So now that we're thinking about that, what are some of the elements you're going to do to make sure that your ethos becomes derived and it happens during your presentation, earlier rather than later?
Dress nicely.
Dress. Okay. How you present information. What's that called again? You remember? Framing. Energy. Authentic. What else? How else can you get direct? Extemporaneous.
What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? Extemporaneous speaking is that you have notes in front of you, you're organized, but you're speaking out to the audience the majority of the time. In order to get effective derived ethos, the easiest ways you can do in your embedded introduction is that it's memorized. That portion, you do not look at anything. 2 minutes worth of material, you're looking right at your audience. You already know what you're going to say. That will help build your credibility earlier on. If you're reading a story rather than telling a story, you all can put together which one's stronger. The organization of your ideas. Okay. Are you organized? Are you road mapping? Are you giving an internal roadmap with transitions and signposting where you are, repeating words, repeating ideas? Are you working to find common ground? That's derived. That's derived. This is goodwill to your audience. This is the psychographics I was talking about with the marketing avatar. What are you doing to create goodwill with your audience to show that you are trying to connect with them and that you're trying to find that common ground to connect with ideas that matters to them as well, not just to you in your research. Okay. How can you make it matter to them? Do that Google Doc. That would be really neat. All right. We're getting close to the end. Answer with ease, application. This is the last slide. I've covered most of this. I loved this picture. This is my one attempt at humor. He's in so much pain, he's little. Answer with ease, be positive, show engagement. Make sure you understand the question. Again, I'm repeating a bit because I didn't change the slide when I should, but I want to make sure I hit all the points. Answer the question even if you aren't able to tackle it directly. Okay, so maybe hit it from the side rather than dead on. Okay, this is what I can answer. This is what I'm able to answer. And this is why. Always tell why. That's that what? So what? Justification. Within that scope, fall back on it and respond to criticism with unification techniques. What does that mean? What does that mean? If someone says to you, your research seems really limited in this area, and this is why. Can you talk to me about this? Agree with them. Unify. Yeah, you're right. It is limited in this area. This is dead on. I don't agree with the reasoning and the rationale behind it. I believe it's more limited for this reason because based on the research that I've done the last X amount of weeks, this tells me that this is where the limitations are stronger. But I agree with you. Mm-hmm. If I had the chance to do this over again, this is the direction I would have taken it. Unify. That's so strong. Rather than become terrified, oh my gosh, they're contradicting my research. No. Acknowledge it. Be honest with it. Recognize. Research has limitations. That's a really good tip and skill to learn. It's honest. It's authentic. Any questions at all? I'm going to be ending pretty quickly because I'm just looking at the time. Yes.
When you give a big presentation like this, what does your note sheet or your note card or your paper look like in front of you? Like kind of like an organizer, or what would you recommend for starters?
For starters, I would recommend printing out your PowerPoint with notes like this.
Okay.
Okay. So this is not something I typically do anymore, but given I've had sort of an unusual weekend, and I didn't have quite the footing I wanted with this. I looked over my notes quite a bit. I know the content, but I thought, no, I'm going to make sure I have this just as a backup. And so I printed it out before coming. I knew the content, but this is really easy to follow, and it gives you that information right below it. Plus, there's no issue about following your own chicken scratch. That's probably the best I can offer as far as organizationally. The next is always where students fall short, and it's practicing out loud. students don't spend enough time doing that. And I'm gonna give you my favorite analogy of the self-deprecating humor of I am terrible at organized sports. I am. I've always wanted to be good. I have 3 sisters. They're phenomenal athletes. And I've always just been really envious of that. And so becoming a better speaker when using the idea of organized sports and trying to be a better athlete, it would be the same idea as me coming over to a football and just holding it and meditating it with it every day for 20 minutes a day. I'm just meditating. And then that idea to take that, to believe that when the next time I go and play tag football, that I'm going to be a killer athlete on the field, right? That I'm going to be incredible and build it. Right. So it's the same concept applying to public speaking. People take their scripts and they're reading it to themselves. And I see them sitting by trees and they're reading. They're not speaking out loud, right? The only way you're going to improve is if you create a mock environment that's similar to where you're going to be presenting. And I always tell students, play with your stakes. Okay, play with those stakes. If you're really nervous, start in a very low stakes environment where you're comfortable. Start with lining up someone's pet and talking to the pet. I don't care. Like create an environment that isn't scary. Go to Tut Library, get a small conference room where no one's around and it's not scary. But if you're, an effective public speaker and you're like, I've got this, I'm not afraid to talk. I speak in front of a classroom, I'm, in front of kids, my peers don't intimidate me. Great. I have my competitive speakers that compete for speech and debate. I take them to Warner at noon and I make them present as people are walking by and they're like, oh, it's not me. And they're just speaking out to nobody, but they can't break their focus. Yeah, that sounds crazy. It does. But in competition, the stakes are really high. And you have audience members that are their other competitors that are looking at them and not necessarily giving them awesome nonverbal feedback, right? And so you have to be trained to have that thicker skin. So wherever you lie, there are things that you can do to really help you with that focus and that concentration. I encourage you to not do the meditation football. I encourage you to get out there and practice, really practice what you're saying so your brain can be caught up with your content and you have that credibility that you need. Questions? Yeah.
Tied to that, I tend to speed up. Like the longer I talk, the more I speed up. And so I was just wondering what you would suggest other than just kind of like timing yourself.
Well, okay, the first step is awareness, so you're there, but there's nothing you can really do beyond awareness and saying slow down.
It's like, but after the fact, they're telling me to slow down, and then I can't recognize if I'm speeding up though.
Just with a metronome.
That's a good idea. Yep, I would have a metronome app.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, I took a public speaking class and they recommended that we have that.